Broncos guru. Here's Trent Severn Waterway, just one lock above Georgian Bay. And you can see that there is a red and a green marker here, and this gentleman just decided to go on the wrong side of it.
Sometimes in boating, some poor decisions are made, just like some of the things we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Palma, where this was the scene this past week, when P&O Cruise Line's vessel the Britannia opted to stay in port as a heavy storm approached the island. Here these images show what actually happened as the storm hit. You can see heavy winds and heavy rains battering the island and the cruise ship. Several cruise passengers recall seeing things such as chairs, towels, umbrellas, and other things literally flying off the vessel and into the water. But this is only the start of the Britannia's troubles. As the storm progresses, the Britannia winds up in big trouble as its mooring lines wind up failing and the vessel breaks free from the dock. After the mooring line snapped, the Britannia quickly winds up leaving the dock and being pushed across the harbor due to the prevailing winds and seas. Unfortunately, there was another cargo vessel and a breakwater on the other side of the harbor, and the Britannia winds up colliding with both of these, causing some minor damage to the Britannia. Fortunately, no major injuries were reported during the incident, but one of the lifeboats was damaged on the Britannia during the collision, causing the Britannia to actually have to send some of its passengers home. Due to maritime regulations requiring there are enough lifeboats for everybody on the vessel, this meant that 321 paying passengers on board the Britannia were actually told they had to fly home to Southampton from here. The vessel did wind up having to pull out the port and ride out the storm offshore due to the conditions being too strong for them to try and get the vessel retied up. The vessel did come back in once the conditions subsided. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Australia, which is going to start off with a story of adventure. When the Australian man Mark Cornell decided he was tired of lockdowns and everything that was going on and went ahead and sold all of his worldly possessions to go ahead and buy a retrofitted sailing yacht, and he began living on this sailing yacht almost 3 years ago, preparing it for an epic adventure to go and start sailing around the world, with one of his first primary destinations being going from Australia over to Indonesia. Mark Cornell and his one crewmate wound up leaving almost 6 months ago after 2.5 years of prep work on the vessel, only to find themselves in Cairns and stuck there for 6 months due to bad weather, until this week when they finally decided to set sail, only to have an abrupt end to their trip due to mechanical failure, which wound up with their vessel crashed on the Great Barrier Reef. Fortunately, the crew was able to get off a distress call and get rescued, but the adventure is over and they wound up having to leave the vessel with no more than the shirts on their back. Fortunately, no injuries were reported during the incident, but it's a very sad ending to what was supposed to be an epic adventure. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to the coast of Romania, where this was the scene this past week, when a cargo ship from the Ukraine wound up raising suspicions when it declined Romanian assistance when it wound up calling for help, saying it was having buoyancy issues. The ship is the 45-year-old cargo vessel Amanos, and it was traveling the Black Sea. It wound up reaching out to Romanian authorities requesting search and rescue assistance as it claimed it was having buoyancy issues and possibly having a hole in the bow of the vessel. Romanian authorities quickly launched boats out to the scene in case an evacuation was needed, but once the officials arrived on the scene, they actually arrived to a vessel that was unresponsive. They tried to communicate with the captain of the ship, who would not even respond to the Romanian officials. After several attempts and a while of hanging out there, the captain finally did get on the radio and actually denied assistance, claiming they were going to continue on to Turkey, raising some suspicion with Romanian officials as to what the actual cargo is on board the vessel. Here we can see in these images, the boat is definitely riding really low in the water, which leads us to believe the vessel is absolutely taking water on board. But the refusal of assistance again just raises some suspicion after this vessel's AIS data shows that it made several stops in the Ukraine. It did wind up making it into Turkish water safely, unassisted, but again, crews still wonder to this moment what was actually on board the boat. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know, and you might see your stories over here, just like Stephen Marsh, James Notoris, and Chris Levins did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here.